It's really interesting to notice the parallels to present day. Right?
Sure.
And so, what was Stanford like for you as an environment of innovation, of sort of being able to build stuff? Eventually started something in the dorm room. But what was the environment like when you just had those ideas percolating?
Very good question. So I'd say, look, I'm not sure really what it's like being an undergrad today, because now it's literally 20 years later. I started my undergrad in '97, which is now like a generation ago. But at the time, while Stanford was known for entrepreneurship and so on, as I said, it was something that 30-somethings would do. You didn't think, oh, you could start something in a dorm room. That was pre-Zuckerberg, it was pre-Facebook, it was before all that stuff, right? And it was before, frankly, open source had developed and Linux and PHP and all these kind of toolkits that would let you snap something together and launch it, right? Now, Larry and Sergey were doing their thing out of Google, but it was not at all obvious that what they were doing was going to be so wildly successful. And they were grad students, so again, they were older and whatnot. And frankly, they weren't they were well known on campus, but not that well known until the thing totally blew up, right? And even then, people didn't think that they were making a profit until '04 when the IPO came out, and it was like, oh my God, how much money are they making? Actually, a great article to Google actually is Google's toughest search is for a business model, right? If you go and look at that, it's like from 2002 or something like that, and they're wildly off in their estimates of Google, right? So people didn't have the role models at that time in quite the same way. And so the funny thing is, as much as Stanford is known for entrepreneurship, it was something that sort of happened around Stanford, but it was not within Stanford. It wasn't something like it is today where you have incubators on campus and the university taking a stake in you and all this type of stuff, where Berkeley now is a fund to invest in its graduates. All that stuff was not available at that time. What there was a sense that, oh, okay, if you're 30-something, well, you can probably get a meeting with a VC if a prof makes an intro. I think that was roughly the level of awareness on campus. And then, when I say that we founded Council in a dorm room, we did. It was basically in my brother's MBA dorm room, right? So that's almost 6-7 years later. So that's now 2007, right? So this is in the middle of Web 2.0. Google is being proven out. Facebook is not yet the world dominating thing it is today, but it was, it's a bigger thing. And in 2007, basically, so I just finished up my PhD a year earlier. I was teaching in the stats department. My brother was doing his MBA. My friend Balaji Srinivasan, who has the same first and last name, it's actually an extremely common name. There's 143 people on LinkedIn named Balaji Srinivasan. You wouldn't believe it. It's basically like Jesus Theos, but it's like God twice. See, my parents also wanted to give me a little kick in the butt, right? So basically, me, Ramji, my friend Balaji Srinivasan, my friend Rishi Kacker, who was, he had founded a company called Voltage, it's a security company that was acquired recently by HP.
If I can interrupt,
yeah.
I'm wondering, what were there, if any, sort of common traits of this group? Were they very precocious? Were they very ambitious? Were they very aggressive? What was that founding team like?
What was the founding team? So, so those four, and then Eric Evans, who's a PhD in genetics, we're all ambitious kind of guys, I guess, in retrospect. We brought different things to the table. I don't know. I think we basically had folks, we had known each other for a long time, we trusted each other, and we complimented each other, so how was that?
And so you got to working in the brothers' MBA room.
Yeah, so we worked at, basically that was our first address, the place the council was incorporated. And I remember we got the highest bandwidth connection that you could get for, because Stanford has very high bandwidth connections, and they're usually not requisitioned for a dorm room, because we're basically running multi-threaded processes to slurp all of this human genome data out of NCBI and whatnot. And it was something where we got, various inquiries, from the apartment guys are like, what are you doing in there, right? And we had basically moved out the beds and put the beds up against the walls so we could sleep on the ground, so we could have the office in the living room and so on. It was true, scrappy type stuff, right? We built that into a very large business.
Yeah, so for the folks that don't know in the room, I'd love if you could tell us a little about Counsel.
Sure.
The thing that's particularly of note that I want to draw some attention to is that it was, I think as your friend Chris Dixon said, this kind of full stack startup. It was fully integrated across the way and really had a dominant hold across the market.
Yeah, so Counsel, COU, and SYL. So basically, what did we do? What do we do? So what we started off doing is still a very good business for us is taking all the Mendelian diseases that you may have heard of, right? So sickle cell, Tay-Sachs, cystic fibrosis. You probably heard of one or more of those diseases. And what was the standard of care prior to us was that you would go and you'd sort of put somebody into an ethnic box, and then you would go and say, okay, you're of this ethnicity, then you get this test, and and that's it, right? And so there's one issue with that is you have someone like Obama, and then he is at risk for both sickle cell and cystic fibrosis and so on, right? Like so he's got alleles from two different areas, right? The second issue is that there's a ton of rare diseases that actually collectively aren't that rare. Just like Amazon has this long tail of books, and if you sum up the long tail of books, that's more than the head, right? Like that's more than the top ones. There's all these rare genetic diseases like Smith-Lemli-Opitz and so on that are not that rare. And with genotyping technology and then eventually sequencing technology, you could take all of those diseases, test them at the same time for less than the price of the biochemical tests that existed before, right? So what we had was this genomics curve, which we could ride to like 100x cost advantage on fundamental cost of goods. And that allowed us to have a 100x margin on something that we could propagate up into other areas of the business. So that's basically the technology that we developed, built, and productized.
And obviously,